Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, or whatever time period it is wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the 4th edition of the Ask Me Anything YouTube subscriber special, where we are celebrating 3,500 YouTube subscribers, which, it's insane, to be honest. I say this every time, and every time I'm just blown away. As a matter of fact, we are actually at 3,600-ish subscribers, so I am again late with this. I do apologise for those who are pedantic listening when this goes live, but you know what? I don't really care. The only one who's allowed to be pedantic, me, because it's very much on brand. So, what are we going to do here today? Well, as per usual, I took to Twitter, Instagram, and the Law by Night Discord server and asked the beautiful family, the World of Darkness community, basically, ask me anything. Like, whether it's World of Darkness related, whether it's to do with me, whether it's to do with the characters, just ask whatever, and I will dip in and out of character, the characters being the narrator, Malcolm Orlock Ashburn of Clan Nosferatu, Colin the Gargoyle, and there's some questions that are directed to me, the Law by Night podcast guy, and we've got a huge array of interesting questions and things that need answering today, so without further ado, let's hop on to the Law by Night Twitter page and ask the one question that was asked to me, which is a little bit disappointing. And this question comes from Demos Fanes, HWP. I've probably mispronounced that, which is also very on brand. Anyway, what's the question that you have, sir, madam, or whatever you use to identify yourself?
For our teacher, knowing what you know now, if you could have chosen to be embraced by any other clan, yes, we know Nosferatu is the best, into this world of darkness, which would you have chosen and why? Or bloodline? I suppose I'm not picky, but now that you've basically taught us about all the clans, almost every bloodline I can think of and a few I didn't know about, I'm curious about the answer to that question.
I bet you are. A very interesting question, because I'm going to be very boring here and tell you that the narrator, well, he does believe the Nosferatu is the best clan, period. So he wouldn't have things any other way, although don't tell him this. He's very much a Toreador beneath, so maybe he could have been embraced into the Toreador clan. So there's that element of the question. However, I'm going to answer this question in a different way, in that I'm going to tell you that the narrator wasn't initially going to be a Nosferatu. I know, right? Mind blown. No, when I was creating the narrator, I was thinking about different concepts I could use. He was very nearly a Kiacid or Kiacid, depending on who you ask, because, you know, there's that stereotype of them being, what's the word I'm looking for? Kindred scholars, librarians, that was the word I was looking for. But then I did some reading, and actually there's a bit more to them to that. Thank you very much, Matthew Dawkins, and the wonderful writing you did in Law, the Bloodlines, and beyond. I also toyed with the idea with the narrator being a gargoyle, because I thought it was really funny seeing a gargoyle in a suit, sounding really posh rather than the big old that you usually hear with, like, you know, what you traditionally would expect from a gargoyle and a monster. But it was only digging through an old V20 character sheet that I wasn't allowed to use because of a shitty DM, or ST, beg your pardon, bad Law by Night podcast guy, is the idea that there was this Nosferatu who wanted to learn more, but he was just starting as a fledgling, he wanted to learn more, and I had a look at that and I thought, I'm going to turn this into the podcast character just out of spite. Because I'm like that, really. Anyway, tangent aside, thank you ever so much for the question. It's wonderful to be able to talk about my character like this, because I often think that people aren't interested, because I pepper bits of lore in there, and then I remember that people actually do care. Although, come to think about it, I don't actually think that's what you were asking, but anywho, I hope that answered your question in some capacity, or at least you're very entertained with my ramblings. But now we move on to Instagram, where we have 5 questions now, which is a bit of a surprise because it's usually Instagram that suffers the most. And we're going to start with a Cursed Memes 05. Sorry, I'm going to be pedantic and read that correctly. Cursed_memes 05. As I said, pedantic, terribly on brand. Anyway, question. Go!
How does a Cainite achieve Golconda, and what does it provide for them?
That is an extremely interesting question. A question that I don't think should be fully explored here, simply because the topic of Golconda should really have its own episode, and we've got quite a lot of questions to go through. Golconda, for those that need a little reminder, because it is very rarely brought up in Vampire the Masquerade, is essentially finding a balance between oneself, whether you are connected to the road or path of humanity, and your beast. if you're not obviously a path of humanity, you'd be a path of enlightenment if you're with a Sabbat or a much older vampire. What does achieving Golconda bring to the vampire? Well, without giving it too much thought at the moment, it's very subjective. If you think about any religious friends that you know, let's use Catholicism, because that's, in the West, the most common to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, by all means correct me, but let's stick with Catholicism. Every single Catholic person is going to have a different relationship with the religion, the faith, the teachings of the Bible, God, and whatever. I'm not a religious person, at least not in that sense. I can't really give too much of an examples there. As I said, it's very difficult to answer because it's so subjective. It would mean something to a different Canaanite, a different kindred. You'd essentially find peace, I guess. Like, it's a very... I apologise if that's like an incredibly bland answer, but as I said, it's very difficult to answer just bang there on the spot. That said, I did get these questions a while ago, so I could have prepared for it a bit more. But as I said, Golconda, very interesting topic, very underplayed in Vampire the Masquerade games because of how vague it is. The similar with true faith and the power of religion, or in some cases, the power of true love. I hope there's some sense in one's ramblings, but that is definitely a good prompt to me to actually write an episode about Golconda, so thank you very much, cursed_meme05. Let's go on to the next question from Snyders_return, a very supportive member of the tabletop role-playing game community. Definitely go and check out the stuff they're doing. They're super supportive, super great. Anyway, what is your question?
Where does Law by Night go next after World of Darkness and Cyberpunk?
But Law by Night doesn't do cyberpunk material, I hear some of you ask, furiously clickety-clacketing away at the keyboard or your phone. Not yet, is my response, because the lovely people at Artelsaurian Games, I've probably mispronounced that, the people who make the cyberpunk TTRPGs, The Witcher, amongst other things, they very kindly a while ago got in touch with me, and they sent me a whole supply of their books. It's for me to do lore-related stuff, which, if I mentioned it a while ago on social media, but it was a few months back, and there's been a lot more interesting and cool people that have been surfing the interwebs and finding me since then, so I'm just gonna bring that in now. But there's a good point. Where do I go after that? Honestly, not a fucking clue. I haven't really given it much thought at the moment because I'm still very much in that mindset of trying to do World of Darkness stuff and trying to find time to read the cyberpunk stuff, because there's a lot of books they sent me. PDFs, I should point out. There's about some 30 odd, so there's a lot of things to deal with. Maybe once this material has all been exhausted, I would branch out into more generalised things. Like, a few people have suggested that I go and do game reviews, because that is often the things that's most interesting to them, which I find a little bit curious. I'm honestly not too sure. I do get requests to do this, that, and the other, that I should consider going to do this, that, and the other. But, I honestly don't know. I'll have to think of that when I begin to reach the end of things to talk about. So, thank you very much, Snyder's Return, for that question. We move on to Shurik_Lusev. What is your question?
Which V5 City by Night book would you like to read or to write yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you ever so much for thinking that I could possibly attempt the endeavour that is writing a by night book. But other than that, I'm not really all that interested in reading any of them, to be honest. Simply because I, at this moment of recording, don't really have the confidence to... Because if you were to read a by night city book, it would imply that you would want to run a game in that city. And the only ones that I have any real interest in doing are the ones in the UK. I have the Victorian Age books, like London by Night, the Victorian Companion, and Victorian Age proper. I have the Dark Ages British Isles book and Dark Ages Europe, because they kind of go hand in hand. But other than that, I'm not really interested. Now, if World of Darkness did a London by Night, or they did an updated version of the British Isles for V5, so we have a better understanding what the various different cities are doing, because of Fall of London, a lot's happened since Mithras is dead or not dead, depending on the vague endings of that material, that module. And given that Mithras was very much the nucleus? The epicenter, the core of the British Isles, a lot of things have changed now that he's not there. So I would be very curious to see what the various different cities were doing. We know that Camden is the Prince of Edinburgh, for example. So I can't speak properly. This is why I do things in takes, because I trip over myself all the time, vocally. So yeah, so if there was an updated British Isles book, or a London by Night, ignoring the existence of Fall of London, or perhaps adding to it, I would read that, and I would love to do that. Because a lot of the community creators out there are American, and they do a lot of American stuff, which is fantastic. You've got LA by Night, you've got ATL by Night, you have BG by Night. There's so many different American ones out there, but there's very few British ones. You've got Blood on the Thames. Although they're not called Blood on the Thames, there's something that's like Blood on the Thamesis or something. They're the ones that do their thing in Bristol, which is awesome. I want more British vampire. Let's make vampire British again. I'm sorry, I should not have done that. So yeah, more British setting books is the answer to your question. Thank you very much, Lucev. And before I make more of a tit of myself, here are some cult adverts for you to listen to. Ta-da!
Friggin' Chicken recently challenged several random people to a taste test between Friggin' Chicken and the other leading chicken-flavored products. Let's listen for which one they preferred.
Ma'am, care to participate in a taste test? Here, try this leading brand of chicken.
Oh my gosh! Is that week-old fish?
Now, try this.
Oh, this is some good chicken. What is this?
Sir, take a test for me?
Sure. Seriously, drive these up your
Here, try this one.
Hey. Motherfucking great chicken right there. What is this?
It's friggin' chicken.
This is cat, right? Are you feeding me cat?
Try this.
Holy that's good. What the is this 9 out of 10 people preferred Friggin' Chicken over the competition. Why?
'Cause that's some good chicken. I mean, friggin' chicken.
Friggin' Chicken, you'll swear it's the best you've ever had. You love the talking baby movie, and the talking pig, and even the talking car in that show. You know the one I'm talking about. But now prepare for the most hilarious talkingest normally mute object yet. He's Steve Cash, a New York banker and recent whittler down on his luck.
And 10 makes 100. Here's your money, ma'am.
Ma'am, I happen to have a glandular problem. That's it. I'm withdrawing all my millions from this bank.
Cash! She's an ATM machine with the soul of his dead wife.
There's something familiar about this ATM machine.
I love you.
Wow, those marketing guys are geniuses.
Together, they're learning to make the most of their special situation.
So that girl from accounting used me today.
Really?
She wasn't like everybody else. When she pushed my buttons, she was very gentle.
Oh, honey, if you don't stop, I'm gonna have to make a deposit.
Transferring cash. Wednesdays at 8:30 in the BMC. Say goodbye to yellow teeth and spots on your dirty dishes.
It's incredible.
Look at that shine.
Your smile or these dinner plates?
Harnessing the secrets of ancient Egypt, now there's a dishwashing detergent so powerful, it doesn't just leave your dishes spotless, it actually whitens your teeth. Patented time-release spiritoids remove caked-on food and grease and remain on the plate to be absorbed into your food to clean your teeth while you eat. Dazatron, the dishwashing detergent of the future for cleaner plates and whiter teeth. Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Redmond bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Redmond to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Would you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Redmond of being a murderous child pornographer. But Redmond had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer.
In a world where people live and die.
Do you think you could just go in there and handle this by yourself?
If that's what it takes. He was about to meet his greatest foe.
Kill them all! All of them!
and a girl.
Hello.
Hi.
And a comic relief sidekick who won't make it to Act 3.
I picked the wrong month to cancel my life insurance.
No, don't say that. You're gonna make it.
With a guy from that other movie that was slightly popular, and what's-her-name from that show you sometimes watch. In a movie with 2 spectacular CGI battle sequences and an advertising campaign that will leave you no choice but to see this film. See it, because it's a movie, and all your friends are going. In theaters Friday, and on DVD in 3 months.
Hello there! You're going to have to listen to my voice again now, ever so sorry, and that was me. I have a strange talent, I guess, for voices. Maybe I should explore that more in more episodes. Anyway, after that short little break, we return to the Instagram portions of the Ask Me Anything. We have 2 of them left before we go over to the lovely ball of fluff that is the Law by Night Discord server. And the penultimate question comes from my dear friend, Lady Duck Scarlet. What is your question?
Orlok, would you let me hug you? Same question to Colin.
Well, Orlok, I guess, would reluctantly let people hug him because he would just assume they're Malkavians and it's kind of their thing. He puts, and I put, in air quotes. He wouldn't make a habit of it, though. He's a sort of a free strike sort of person. First time, okay, you're a bit weird. Second, a bit pushy. Third time, that's the last time. Fourth time, off goes your head. You're being a bit too cleany. But, Colin. Oh, Colin. Oi! Come here. Come here. There's someone here who wants to know if they can hug you.
No! I will not let anyone hug me! I'm not cute! I'm a big, nasty gargoyle!
I think that's a no. Just gonna put that out there. I'm pretty sure nobody else has asked that question already. It's not like we've got a bunch of thirsty Discord members. Oh, wait. Anyway, swiftly moving on, we go on to the final Instagram question from how the fuck do you say that? He says, looking at his phone. Wyatt Tig? Fuck it, I don't know. I don't know. It's spelled WYATTIDK. I don't know. There we go. That's the bit I recognise. I don't know. What's your question?
What's your favourite song and genre?
Well, I'm that basic bitch that's going to say that I really do listen to a bit of everything, except for metal. It's not that, well, you've probably heard the arguments before, it's just not my cup of tea, basically. But the genre that I really resonate most with are, like, jazz, Motown and Northern Soul, disco, funk. That's all of that lovely little bubble of groovy shit. But my favourite song is You Make Me Feel So Young by Frank Sinatra, right? That's the way to my heart. You play that song, I will smile, I will sing, and I will badly dance for you. If asked nicely. But yeah, that's my favourite song, without a shadow of a doubt. Alright, and we have reached the end of the Instagram questions, and we did the Twitter ones a while ago. So I'm now going to have a drink of water, because doing that Colin voice, I mean Colin strangling me after getting him over to ask that question, because we're definitely 2 different people, I'm going to have a drink of water whilst you listen to some adverts, so... Fuck off.
Phil's here. Gotta run. Great breakfast, honey.
Have a good day, dear. I'm glad you liked the muffins.
Hey, what's that on the counter? That's not my margarine. That's butter.
It's...
Bitch! You know I'm supposed to watch my LDL levels.
I thought it would be a nice change. You couldn't even tell.
You don't want a divorce. You're trying to kill me. I'm glad I slept with your sister.
I thought it was margarine grade B butter. Well, the rancid taste of margarine with all the saturated fat of butter.
You are on fire, Bill! I finally took your advice and you were right. I feel more confident than ever. You the man! Isn't it great? I couldn't even believe it. We went out to dinner and afterwards we started getting busy. I went into the bathroom to take it. I could feel it right away. Hell, you could see the title change in the toilet bowl.
The Visatrack. For an ordinary drug-enhanced erection just isn't enough. Common side effects include fainting, tingling in extremities, temporary blindness, deathly pallor, time perception distortions, aggravated bladder syndrome, emotional incest, pronounced incontinence, delusions of grandeur, and elevated risk of stroke.
Grandpa, will you take me to Space Burger?
Space Burger, huh? You know, when I was your age, space was mostly a mystery. We didn't know what was up there. Why, I thought there were little alien kids on Mars that might be watching me. Yeah, I used to make signs for them saying, "Hello, Martians," or "Give me a ride on your rocket craft." Of course, I was young and naive, thinking Martians could read English. Everyone knew Martians communicated telepathically through space operators on their moon base.
Billy, what did I tell you about talking to Grandpa?
But I want to go to Space Burger.
Space Burger. This looks like a job for Commander Mom. Report to the space van.
Oh, boy.
We can drop Grandpa off at the home on the way there.
Of course, you don't see Martians on space probes. Everyone knows Martians live in invisible domes.
Space Burger, food for the space age, not old age. Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Would you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Rebbins of being a murderous child pornographer. But Rebbins had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer. Money troubles, need cash quick, why not try mugging someone? These are exactly the kind of questions the criminals are asking themselves right now. Did you know that the government requires you to wait 10 days for a gun? Why, in that time, a criminal could kill your family 50 times over. So how does a law-abiding citizen like yourself get a theft deterrent system in their hands in the next hour? Come to Loophole Lenny's. We've got antique military weaponry from blunderbusses to World War I grenades. Modern muggers may be stronger and faster than they used to be, but that doesn't mean they can take a slug fired by a Civil War-era pistol any better. And if you're the kind of person that can't sleep at night knowing serial rapists might be in your front yard, we've got German sniper rifles approved by the Kaiser himself that'll make picking them off one by one from the safety of your roof no problem. Buy a weapon this month and we'll throw in an ammo belt with the Constitution printed on it free of charge. Loophole Lenny's, defending your tomorrow with the weapons of yesterday, today.
Ah, would you look at this?
What's that?
Plague of locusts descend on small Indian town.
Jeez, I can't imagine what that must be like.
And look at this. Civil war still raging between ethnic factions in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, heard about that.
And in Zimbabwe, they got to use ox carts for ambulances.
That's terrible. Hey, it's a good thing we live in the U.S.
It sure is, buddy. Hey, bartender, 2 more U.S. ales?
U.S. ale. Welcome to the United States of Inebriation.
Alright, Lottery, we have made our way over to the Law by 9 Discord server, and Lottery is a term that was created by the members of the Law by 9 Discord server. That's essentially the fan name. Use it, don't use it, whatever makes you feel happy. I'm not going to force it, I think it's kind of cute. I prefer God. Ruthless dictator. No, I'm not that, regardless to a certain popular opinion. Anyway, without further ado, the first question we have comes from Dougie. What's your question?
What's your favourite soap opera?
As far as I'm concerned, they're all fucking diatribe shit, so I don't actually have a favourite. Sorry. Next question comes from Chompy, that darn Ravnos. Anyway, what's your question?
What made you decide to start a YouTube channel, and what keeps you motivated and committed?
Well, that's a very lovely question. It's actually been a while since I've been asked that question. I actually answered that on the very first Q&A that I did, but that was so long ago that I don't mind repeating it here. That, and I just love telling people how I started doing YouTube-y shit. Okay, so cast your mind back to a couple of years ago. A time before COVID, a time before pandemic, a time before when we were allowed to hug people in the general public. So I got caught up then because it was so distressing. Anyway, I was playing a video game called Vampire. It's a vampire game. You play as a Dr. Jonathan Reed who comes back to London just after the First World War, becomes a vampire and has to deal with the fucking Spanish flu. That's basically the basis of the game. And I absolutely love the dark, gritty setting. Having been introduced to the world of darkness since then, I'm very surprised that Dontnod Entertainment haven't had their ass sued because the number of things that they have pinched from World of Darkness material, how similar a lot of it is. But anyway, so yeah, there's the politics, the clan, and I'm putting that in air quotes, not really clans, they're more breeds, the different types of vampire. There was a lot of things that I really got, stuck onto, and I just got stuck onto. The things that I really got really attached to. I absolutely loved its dark, gritty nature and setting, and how the beast, in Vampire the Masquerade, the beast that's inside you, how that element of it was treated in Vampire as well. And so I loved all of that, and I decided I was going to get the Platinum Trophy, which is the trophy you get on PlayStation versions of games after getting all the other trophies. It's basically a big dick energy thing to wave around in public. Don't wave your big dick in public, that's not a good idea. Anyway, so I decided I was going to do that, but at this point I had basically done practically everything in the game, so you couldn't really spoil much for me now, apart from like a weapon here, an item there. But anyway, so I was doing all that, collecting the final trophies, and I was finding critiques of things online, like on forums, on YouTube, and reviews and things, and a lot of people kept comparing it to this game called Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I had never heard of it before, to be honest, so, and as all these people kept comparing it to that, I thought I would go and, see what it was like. I have a decent gaming laptop, so I got that. At the time, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was about £3, so super fucking cheap, and also it comes with the unofficial patch pre-installed, which is an amazing thing. You can go and thank Outstar for that. I believe that was her handiwork. So I downloaded that, and in Bloodlines you have like the little quiz to determine what clan to choose. I did that and I got the Tremere, and it was like the first couple of hours in, I absolutely adored it for all the reasons that I've explained many times before, and just a moment ago actually, why I enjoy Bloodlines. The things that made me enjoy Vampire are the same reasons why I enjoy Bloodlines. But having played that a few times, a bit of an understatement, I wanted more of this Vampire the Masquerade because I quickly learned that Bloodlines was based off of the tabletop game. And I'd find lore videos online, stuff that the Gentleman Gamer did, the stuff that the Primogen did, and there was some stuff that Outstar did. And in fact, the thing that Outstar with her lore stuff is a little bit different from most other people at the time, is that she exclusively did V5 stuff, 5th edition stuff, which not many people did. I mean, V5 hasn't actually been out for that long when you think about it. At the time of this record anyway, like 2-3 years now. So there's that element. I'll get back to that in a moment. And I obviously found like actual plays of it. It was mainly LA by Night that got me properly hooked into the World of Darkness. It just appeared on my YouTube one day, probably because I was hunting down all these other lore bits and Bloodlines related bits. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going to spend an afternoon watching this and see what it's like. I mean, if I don't like it, I don't like it. But no, first second in, I was pulled in instantly. It's because of Alex Ward that I love the Nosferatu so much. Anyway, so there's that. And I wanted to play this game more. And it was one day I was watching one of Outstar's videos for breakfast. I was having breakfast while I was watching it. I wasn't literally eating the video. Anyway, and she was talking about the Finnbloods. And in V20 and older editions, the Finnbloods are essentially at the same clan, but they're weaker. I can't think of anybody in V20 and previously that would actually play a Finnblood. But in V5, there's a lot of lore stuff going on. They have their own alchemy, and it's a lot more interesting now, I think. It's far more encouraging to play a Finnblood now than it was previously. I've actually played a Finnblood, and for the 2 sessions I was that character before I was eaten, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I was watching that, having breakfast, the Outstar video, and I was thinking, why hasn't anybody covered this yet? There's a lot of really interesting stuff in V5, and nobody is updating their videos, nobody is talking about V5. There's a lot of V5 book reviews for sure, and reviews on the Cam and Anarch books, but there wasn't actually, people doing up-to-date lore. It was all revised edition stuff, 3rd edition stuff, and at the time I was thinking I wanted to do something that was YouTube related because I work freelance in audio production, and this was a period where I didn't have a lot of work going on and I felt I was getting a bit stagnant. So I thought, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I try and do up-to-date vampire lore? Initially it was only going to be on YouTube, but then I realised very quickly that there were no podcasts on this that did this. That, again, a lot of actual plays. There was a podcast called Podcast by Night. I'll try that again. Podcast by Night. That they talk about Vampire the Masquerade lore. That was actually going to be the original podcast title, but obviously they took it. So I went back to the drawing board and I thought, what am I doing? It's Vampire the Masquerade lore. Oh, lore by night. There, it's fucking fantastic. If I do say so myself. I'm generally quite proud of that. So that's basically how I started it, going back to, playing Vampire, discovering Bloodlines, LA by Night, YouTube videos. I want to do this myself. But the second part of your question, what keeps me motivated and committed? That's a very good question, because I just plow through things, really. I just enjoy what I do. I enjoy the writing process, I enjoy the recording, I enjoy everything. I mean, they're tedious bits without, like, I'm writing something and I have writer's block, I'm recording something, I fuck up a line. That Ravnos episode, by the way, was a fucking train wreck, because of so many weird, wacky words in that. And the editing of some episodes, it's tiresome. The longer they are, the more drained I feel. It's just the fact that I know that I enjoy each step of the process is one element, and I know that when I release the episodes that I do, I know that people genuinely enjoy what I do. And seeing that reaction from people is always a really encouraging thing for me, that I'm not wasting my time because people actually enjoy this. I get messages on social media and the Discord server saying that, hey, your podcast is really helpful, I was able to do this and that. That's really encouraging. And what keeps me committed? A deadline. Knowing that I have to have one episode written a week, one recorded and uploaded a week. That said, I record a month in advance. So as of this recording, there are 3 episodes waiting to go live. So that's pretty neat, I think. That's all exciting as well. So really, but the motivation and the committed bit are kind of go hand in hand, because it's just the positive feedback and how people just love the stuff that I do and how supportive they are. Some people offer helpful advice and I listen to it and I take on board, especially right at the beginning, like trying to find the balance between spoken dialogue and the music. Like, not some of my proudest moments, that, to be honest, but you live and you learn. So thank you ever so much, Chompy, for taking me down that pleasant trip down memory lane. Christ on a bike, I've just gone back to have a look at that waveform and see everything recorded properly for that last question, and I just ranted for 10 whole minutes. Wow. This is going to be a long episode. Alright, moving straight onward, we got Alucard. Oh dear. Anyway, Alucard, what do you want to know?
Traditions or technocracy?
This is a mage question, and I don't feel all that comfortable answering it, simply because my mage, the Ascension knowledge, isn't particularly fantastic. So I'm going to go with traditions, simply because Vampire the Masquerade has traditions, so booyah! Next question comes from Dustin Varrell. What is your question?
What is your least favourite interpretations of vampires?
The entire Twilight saga. No, seriously, the whole thing's fucking garbage. I cannot think of one single redeeming factor any of the books or any of the films have. It's just shocking. That shit should be illegal. I mean, glitter. Fucking glitter on vampires. What? The next question comes from... Oh, it's Doug again. Ask away.
What's your favourite McDonald's menu item?
I don't actually eat McDonald's for a lot of allergy reasons, so... There, I guess. Silent Hunder. Is that Hunder or Thunder? Silent Hunder has got a question now. What would you like to know?
When and why were you embraced, and what was your relationship with your sire?
This is obviously a question for Orlok, Malcolm Ashburn, the narrator. Well, Malcolm, as I've said before, he was embraced just before the deluge by Yima, child of Abzamiliard, and the two were, well, they weren't close, but they weren't hating each other either. I mean, I can't imagine, especially at that period and point, that many vampires and sires actually got along as besties, I guess. There's some exceptions, of course, but, I mean, it was okay. Could have been worse. Could have been better. But as to why he was embraced, I would answer that, but I'm going to answer that in another episode, so stay tuned for that. The next question comes from can't speak, Blood Tiger XD. Ask away!
If they made an alien game line for the World of Darkness, and I mean aliens as an alien species, not the xenomorphs from the Alien movies, how would you do it?
That's a very interesting question, because the World of Darkness is... it kind of covered every single mythological aspect that is used in media. Well, not everyone, the popular ones, werewolves, vampires, etc., etc. But aliens? I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is that what existential horror would the aliens bring upon themselves? Because in all the games you play as the vampire, the werewolf, and there is some unique element of horror that they have to deal with themselves, rather than, well, to an extent, the horror that the vampire brings onto the mortal, but it's more about the character's journey, the person you're playing. So, would there be multiple races of aliens that inhabit the planet Earth in secret? Or would it just be one? And if it was just one, and I say species, it could be like how vampire does with clans or werewolf does with tribes, etc. Then again, it all does it like that. The different classes, there we go, different classes of aliens. But going back again to that question of fear, what could the aliens fear? I suppose all the lines about a sense of feeling that they don't belong in that world. Well, how would the aliens exist? Do they have technology that makes them appear as mortals? Or are they perhaps some sort of parasite that's infected itself into the human? It's... Again, going back to the Golconda question, I could just ramble on and on about various different ideas that could and couldn't work for hours and hours, but this isn't really the place to do it. But it's a very interesting question to think about. I mean, are they going to be technology-based, or are they going to have powers-based? I mean, or a bit of both. Is there going to be space travel? Because I'd imagine there would be, because, space, that final frontier, like, the horror can exist up there. There are horror films in space. I personally think they're not as strong as other settings for horror films. That's not to say that they cannot be frightening. They can be, as I just said. But what would the game even be called? Again, I'd have to think about this a bit more, because there's currently no right or wrong answer to do it, because it does not exist. But you've given me stuff to think about for sure. Okay, slight edit, because I was just about to read the next question, and the only name that I could think of at the moment as a knee-jerk reaction is Alien the Invasion or Alien the Integration, which both have very different feels, I think. Anyway, next question comes from Dreyev. What is your question?
Who, throughout history, would make up your favourite Kofi to play with? Real, fictional, anyone?
I somehow feel I'm supposed to give answers like, oh, I really wish I could play a game with Gandhi and the Nelson Mandela, for example. I don't really know, because I've never thought like that. I mean, I'd much rather play with people that I know that are living. To that end, I mean, excuse me, I wouldn't mind playing a game with Outstar, Matthew Dawkins and Jason Carl. I mean, 2 out of those 3 I know rather well. Well, more than most people in this community do anyway. I'd like to pull my family into a vampire game at some point as well, because I'm slowly getting my family round to the idea, so maybe someday. The next question comes from Kid_1. What is your question?
What is your opinion on the Keoseed / Magar, and how do you think they can be integrated in a group of players, as they are rather reclusive?
The Keoseed are one of my favourite bloodlines because of how fucked up their lore is. And if you think about it, you should be terrified of the Keoseed just by knowing they are a La Sombra bloodline. And anybody who believes that they are just, as I said earlier, vampire librarians, they're kind of missing the point. Entirely. Why I believe you should be terrified, as I said, they are a La Sombra bloodline. The La Sombra believe they are perfect. They are perfection. They do not refer to themselves as a clan, they are the La Sombra. Calling themselves a clan would imply there is some sort of equality, or the idea that they could be equal to the other clans. No, they are superior to all the clans. That is the Lasomba mindset. And yet, the modern Kea you had some nutter royal mage who decided he was just going to experiment with some Fey blood, got himself embraced, fucked about in the void, popped out, and he was a Kea or at least an interpretation of the Kea And the Kea as of V20 and beyond, and I believe to an extent revised edition, all they are interested in is mastering the void, the abyss, the shroud, whatever you want to call it, because the name's kind of interchangeable now. Well, it's always been interchangeable, but you know what I mean. So I find it very hard-pressed to think that the Kea would just sit in a library and just scribble away with parchment and ink. They have to find that knowledge somewhere, somehow. I mean, you could easily replace this question with the Gangrel, because the Gangrel are very reclusive. You could include this with all the clans. You could do it with the Ravno as well. So yeah, the Kea do actually have to get up and, you know, find that knowledge themselves, if you stick with the stereotype that they want to find information regarding the Abyss, to master Obtenebration, or Oblivion, as it's called in V5. And to that end, if they do stuff with Kea in V5, I really do think they should be moved away from the Sabbat. The Kea do not belong with the Sabbat, they never have done. They don't really belong with any of them. So, any of the sects. I'd imagine because they would actually make more sense to stay within the Camarilla. And that's a very weird thing to say, given the fact, you know, they're like a 1 billion foot tall blue and have blacked out eyes. But they're sticking with a stereotype as a whole, they're far too civil for the Sabbat. I mean, that said, the Kea did have its hand in creating some of the paths of enlightenment, but I just find it weird thinking about the chaotic Sabbat and having the Kea fit there. And the Kea only belong to the Sabbat because the Lasomba stayed there. So I'd imagine if they were going to move, they would move soon after the Lasomba did. But I don't actually think I've answered your question. I've just ranted on about that poor stereotype. I don't know, basically, because what I've just described to you is if you stuck to the stereotype rigidly, like you are cemented to that, just play around with it a bit more. Actually, I'll give you an idea that's worth considering. There is an actual play online on YouTube. It's quite a long one because it's a few years old and it's still going today, by a bunch of content creators by the name of Caffeinated Conquests, and they have been doing an LA-based actual play called Rise of the Free States. And one of the players in that is a Kea and that is the most opposite end of a Kea you could imagine. Like the fucker carries around a Gatling gun, for example. Like, that's a murder hobo if I've ever saw one, and it's a Kea. So, basically, don't stick to the clan stereotype, just explore a bit more. And referring to the Magar, who are, in air quotes, the original Kea, they are Fey-touched mortals that have embraced, who stick with the Telmehe Ra. Again, the way that they're written in the True Black Hand, the Guide to the Telmehe Ra for V20, makes them very, very creepy, because you can give them extra limbs. You can really make them an alien detachment. Detachment from the rest of vampire society. So, just play around with the idea a bit more, just break the mold, as it were. And I think at that point we should have another break, so go and relieve yourselves and have something to drink, and we'll see you after messages from our sponsors.
Does your penis always seem to be getting in the way?
I got the last of the groceries, honey. I just need to close the trunk. Wow!
One more nail and this birdhouse would be as good as new.
Yo!
I'm sorry, sir. This dressing room is for women only.
You don't have to let this happen to you. Hi, I'm Dr. Fred Tuck. Don't let your penis interfere with the quality of your life anymore. I have performed over 300 sex changes in my career, and not one of my patients has ever asked for their tackle box back. Come to Tuck's Sex Exchange in the next month, and I'll give you a free estimate. Don't let your peace interfere with your peace of mind.
Tuck's Sex Exchange, located off Beverly Drive. Look for the sign with Toothy, the surgical saw. Tired of sluggish internet access?
Mom, the internet's all slow again.
I'm not your mom. I'm the creature that evolved out of your mom.
Sick of unwanted spam.
Another email message from my old college roommate, Rod Hughes. Oh my.
Computer problems make it frustrating to log on?
Error 432, network access remote server memory allocation assessment table exceeded. Hard drive reformatting will now commence. What?
Looking for something that requires no logons, no unwanted email, coherent sentences, and no technical problems whatsoever? Read a book. Books, the original internet.
Terrorists are prepared to destroy the largest dam in America. Again.
When she bomb goes off, this Hoover will be caught with his panties down.
And only this renegade cop and his ex-wife's manicurist stand between destruction and unexpected love.
I'll just file you as DOA.
This summer, all bets are off. The heat is on. The fix is in. The dogs are out. The game is up. The chips are down. The stakes are high. The odds are low. The danger is huge. The payoff is slim. Friendships will be made. Rules will be broken. Wrongs will be righted. And no unturned stone will be left. Get ready to be turned inside out and upside down. Hoover 2, Hydroelectric Boogaloo. The best damn movie you'll see this year.
When I'm grinding the reverse Poindexter 540 to Ollie northbound to contraband, I can't think about being bloated. That's why every morning I down a Pound Ground, the gentle extreme laxing sports drink. Because when you're pulling a wicked Skillcroft 720, you don't want anything to slow you down.
And as we rock back into more of the Law by Night Discord member questions, we go to Alexander Canehurst. Ask your question.
What is your opinion on the Dune Saga, and have you heard of the RPG that Modiphius made?
I have no opinion on the Dune Saga because I've never heard of it. This is actually the first time I've heard of it, or rather, when I first read that question sometime in late April. That was the first time I heard of it. I haven't really looked into it since then because I like to go into these questions blind. But with the second part of your question, the RPG that Modiphius made, unless you specifically meant the Dune Saga, the only RPG I can think that they did recently, the tabletop RPG, they've done an adaptation of the Fallout series, which I'm intrigued by, I won't lie. I've never really been able to get into the video games. I want to, I really want to, but I just can't quite fully commit myself. It's just a bit, So, maybe in the future I might buy myself a copy and find people to play with. One of my friends actually is one of the authors for it, so I'm more excited because of that element of it, but I don't know if you meant any other RPGs, but that's the only one I'm aware of. Hope that helps. Sorry if it doesn't. The next question comes from ASO Blue Rose. Ask your question and stop this diatribe.
What's your favourite dinosaur and why?
The Law by Night musical coming to a dustbin near you. Anyway, my favourite dinosaur is the Tyrannosaurus Rex because, again, I'm a basic bitch. The next question comes from Ray, but with teeth, and that's teeth with an F. Ooh, fancy. Anywho, what's your question?
Being a vampire of a rather early generation, how long did it take for you to get yourself comfortable with the whole Masquerade thing? More than many other kindred of the time, you were the lord of the night in terms of the strength that comes with a level with blood potency. There had to be some time between then and when you got yourself a nice library to sharpen some baby teeth.
Well, as with all Nosferatus, there was obviously that knee-jerk reaction of, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm fugly. But Orlok actually adapted pretty well. He would often jest that it was an improvement to his life, only that is very truthful in more ways than one. Philip Moskowitz now has a question or two. Ask away.
Colin, what boon or favour would it cost to give you cuddles and head pats?
What? What is this? I said no cuddles, no head pats. Actually, yeah. You can give me cuddles and head pats. For your head on a spike!
I don't think he likes cuddles. Or head pats. I do, though. But I don't know you. So fuck off. How do I still have followers after being so mean? Anyway, swiftly moving on from that, you have another question. Ask away, but proceed with caution.
The narrator, Malcolm Ashburn, and Orlok, with the rise of COVID-19 in the modern night, do you think the Nosferatu had anything to do with the pandemic?
Well, the narrator and Malcolm Ashburn are one of the same, to be totally honest. Okay, we're going to ask them both. Oi! Malcolm, go over here. Some pleb wants to know if the Nosferatu caused, the whole COVID thing. What do you think? I think that is an absolutely stupid idea. Who said such a scandalous thing? I bet you it was a Toreador. No idea, Malcolm. Not a fucking clue. Colin, same thing to you. Apparently some pleb thinks the Nosferatu caused COVID. What do you think about that?
Absolute moron! Oh, it's really boiling my blood now. Let me at him. Let me at him!
I think we've established at this point that the Nosferatu had nothing to do with COVID. In fact, I don't think any of the clans had anything to do with COVID, and quite frankly, I think that's an incredibly offensive idea. I'm not doing this in character, I'm being legit. I don't like the fact that vampires have caused any of the world's atrocities, to be totally honest. There are writings out there that talk about how vampires coped after the 9/11. They've talked about how vampires dealt with World War II after it happened, but they're not the ones who cause things, and this is a bit insensitive, to put it nicely. Moving away from that now, we go to Rickon, brackets Cecilia. I probably mispronounced that, but fuck it. Question, what is it?
Orlok, seeing as old as you are, have you ever met a Niktuku?
Orlok has had his fair share of run-ins with the Niktuku before, far too many to document at this point. Who knows, maybe one or two of them, or at least the stories of, may pop up in future podcast episodes. Stay tuned to find out. Moving on to Project Lactose Added Fish. What's your question?
Yo, Lord Meister, the Loyster, you old geezer. Question for you. What made you pick up the neonate? Do you often pick up lost strays? Was there something special you want to see in them? Innit?
Finally! A year and a bit and somebody asked the question about the neonate, innit, bruv? Sorry, I'll get out of character again. The neonate. What did Malcolm see in the neonate? Well, got some deep Orlok lore for you, bruv, so sit back down. Sorry, I'll stop doing that. Orlok has been summoned by the beckoning, or rather, he felt the pull. And he realised he had all this font of knowledge, but didn't have anybody to teach it to. Rather, if he died, all his knowledge was gone. The neonate got himself in a bit of a pickle. And, well, let's just say that Malcolm had to do a bit of legwork to basically pick up this fledgling and adopt him as such, make him a foster child. We next have a question from Velvet the Magic Cative. What is your question?
We know you are a follower of the path of Cain now, but given your age and affinity for study and discovery, I am sure you are aware of the other paths. Was the path of Cain your first and only road to enlightenment, or have you aligned yourself with other paths or even just considered them?
This question has actually been answered before on previous podcast episodes, and it is going to be further elaborated on in a future episode on a certain road of, let's say, of regalness. That's even a word. It is now. We now have two questions from Bamsey that are very much connected to each other. What are your questions?
Was the clan of the neonate ever mentioned? What of the neonate sire?
Ah, we're getting a bit more neonate lore coming in now. Again, after a year and a bit, some people take some notice. Anyway, the clan of the neonate has not been mentioned in a Lore by Night podcast episode. However, I would just leave it there, but I'm feeling that you want me to tell you what it is. So I shall reveal to you what the clan of the neonate is, and with a slight Phi-based drum roll, is a Caetive, and his sire is a Setite. However, as a little bonus thing to treat you with as, well, I'm feeling in a good mood all of a sudden, I will say that I have actually mentioned him before. Oh yes, it's a hymn, by the way. A certain homebrew that I wrote features the Caetive. Oh, that's right. That's fucking right, ladies and gentlemen. The law-by-night cinematic universe is a fucking thing, baby. The next question comes from Nova. Filthy Toreador. What's your question?
Would you care to dance with a certain Le Sombre boy of mine?
Oh, yes. Absolutely I would. And before I get into trouble with the YouTube gods for being far too naughty, my dear friend Starweaver asks a question. Ask wee!
Dearest Laurie, how are you? Are you taking care of yourself? Drinking and eating enough? Sleeping okay? Additionally, if you were to change up the Kuei-jin to improve upon them, what would you do?
Okay, so let's answer these questions bit by bit. How am I? Currently alright with a slightly hoarse throat. Am I taking care of myself? Meh, to the best of my ability. Drinking and eating enough? I'm probably not drinking enough, actually, given the amount of water I don't have left. Eating enough? Alright, in that moment I'm going to have a little drink of water, because fuck it, why not? Stale water. Delish. Sleeping okay? Last night, as of this recording, which was the last day of April, it was alright. And with the Kuei-jin, soft reboot, have them basically written by Asian writers. So the culture's alright and it's not just Vampire the anime. There you go. Sorted. I've sorted out the Kuei-jin problem. Booyah! Question from Cobalt. Safaran Crusader. I think that's how it's pronounced. Sarafan Crusader. Cobalt Sarafan Crusader. Fuck it. What do you want to know?
If you could pick any system from the world of darkness to be a part of, aside from Vampire the Masquerade, which one would you pick, and what faction would you be, if any?
I would have to say Werewolf the Apocalypse, because, werewolves are fucking cool. As for factions, my knowledge on the systems aren't all that fantastic, so I can't really give a decent answer for that, unfortunately. But in good time, I will. Probably. Next we have a sensible-looking question from Buckethead. What would you like to know?
Why do I have a voice in my head? And more importantly, why does it scream about a sandwich wanting to eat the burrito? Doesn't she know that she'll break the glass? Didn't dealing with those gone teacher?
For a simple answer, and I can only give a simple answer for this, fuck you. Next we have a question from Rexab, I think. Rexab? Rexab. What's your question?
Hey, have you heard of the TV series from the 90s called Kids of the Embraced? And if so, did you watch it?
I've heard of it, but I've not watched it. Anyway, time for some adverts.
Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Redmond bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Redmond to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Would you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Redmond of being a murderous child pornographer. But Redmond had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer. Preparing for a business sales pitch but don't know how to sell your ideas? Try virtual meeting.
So, if we divert advertising away from expensive television spots and spread it around full-page ads in the leading men's magazines, we can...
That's an idea, but here is what I think we should do.
But I didn't finish.
Yes, that's a good point, but everyone listen to my idea.
But I think...
That's true. However, I don't think that our target market will be willing to accept such a radical approach. Listen to what I have to say on the subject. Are you ready? Good. This is a winner.
And virtual meeting doesn't just help with meetings. It can also prepare you for debating your ideas on the internet.
So, I think if the Democrats are going to have a chance at the office, they are going to have to embrace the more liberal sect of the voter bloc.
Shut up, f***ard.
I majored in political science. I think I know what I'm talking about here.
Laughing out loud. You are so gay.
Virtual meeting. The only meeting preparation device to own.
That was a good idea, which was mine originally. F***ard.
In 1984... a generation of children were introduced to a toy that became an instant classic. 20 years later, That toy is transforming to blend into a whole new environment.
Hey, Bob, right? Mind if I borrow your stapler?
You want staples? Get some of these, Execucon!
Nah!
Take control of the noble office bots as they wage slave their secret war against the evil Execucons.
Hey, I'm gonna be here pretty late. Do you mind if I get a cup of that coffee?
Graphitron transform! Coffee is for closers, office bot!
Collect 30 different corporate robots as they battle for workplace supremacy.
Look out, Optical Mouse Prime! It's Cell Phoner!
I've got your number, employees, and you're all getting called in this weekend!
Office bots, transform and clock in.
Deformers!
You live. You die. And sometimes you get brought back to life. This fall.
I'm afraid I can't see too well these days. Do you think you could go to the nearest village and pick me up a loaf of bread?
Bread! Good!
The new horror RPG from Troika Games.
Bread!
Oh, I can tell you where the bakery is, stranger, but before I do, would you mind picking up my little girl from the lake?
You are the monster. Or are you? If you want to enter this bakery, you'll have to defeat me. And this torch! Frankenstein, Breadlust, coming soon to a PC near you.
Game! Good.
Alright, ladles and jelly spoons, or whatever pronouns you prefer. We have a couple of questions left that I'm going to answer before we wrap this up in a nice little bow. The first of these questions comes from Dab. I dabbed then. You didn't see it, but I dabbed. Dab. Olympics. What would you like to know?
Orlok, why must you be so mean to the neonate? Don't they just want to learn like the rest of us? And neonate, if you're down to answer questions, what do you think of Orlok? Do you view him as a father figure?
I will answer on behalf of Orlok because he's currently not here dealing with the neonate, who's also not present. Fuck the neonate, I guess. Alright, we have another question from Velvet, the Magic Kaitiv. What is your question?
What inspired your work on the Kindred wheelchair homebrew? What was your process like? And what can you tell us about the experience? And finally, what do you think the writers for World of Darkness in general could do to help their representation and inclusion of these themes into the settings proper?
I'm really glad somebody asked this question because it means that there are other people out there who think these sorts of things are important like I do. If you don't know what that's referring to, I mentioned it earlier on in this Q&A that a few months ago, well, a couple of months ago at this moment in time, I wrote a homebrew supplement for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition titled The Kindred Wheelchair. It is very much as it sounds. It was inspired very much by the works of Sarah Thompson, who on Twitter is known as Mustang Art. Mustang as in the car company, art, one word. She is a content creator and a writer for various tabletop role-playing games such as Cyberpunk, The Witcher, Pugmire. She's done quite a few things, and of course her homebrew for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the combat wheelchair. And she just appeared on my Twitter feed one day because a lot of people were liking her stuff, the things that she was tweeting out, and I was checking her out, and she did this system, and I was a bit surprised that this stuff hasn't been included before. I say that, I both am and not surprised, unfortunately. I'm surprised in the sense that we're in 2021 and you still don't have official disabled content for these games. Do I think it's done deliberately? No, it's ignorance and ignoring it for the most part, which really isn't any better. And just seeing the stuff that she was doing and the amount of support that she was getting, and in a sense, I like to think that we're a bit similar, where we don't tolerate any bullshit from people. If somebody says something that is ableist, racist, etc., we don't put up with bullying. Like, if we call out on it, basically. We don't put up with any shit, and I really found that inspiring. And again, with the stuff that she was doing, I just sat and thought about, why isn't there any stuff for World of Darkness? And I thought, well, I don't think anybody was going to get round to writing something official anytime soon, so I decided to. And what I'm about to say is some of the work processes kind of answers the question what official writers could do, which is really fucking simple, which is to speak to people who are disabled. If you obtain the PDF, which you can find on my Twitter and Instagram, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I also put a link down in below, and there's also a couple of videos titled Reading the Kindred Wheelchair, and I read one of the stories from the story from it, which also has the kite I mentioned earlier on, in case you didn't work that out. You'll find links there. There's a list of people who contributed to either the proofreading, the mechanics of, and more importantly, feedback with regards to whether what I was writing was okay. Did it feel like I was representing people who are wheelchair users, which is the correct term for it, rather than wheelchair bound, because it's both offensive and inaccurate, because not every single person who uses a wheelchair is solely confined to their wheelchair. They're able to use their legs for a short period of time, for example. So I reached out to some people that I knew that who were wheelchair users on various degrees, so I could get different points and opinions. And to me, that's just common sense, because as I mentioned in the PDF, I've grown up with people with various degrees of disabilities. I'm myself. It's a hidden disability. I'm autistic, which is something I mentioned in the PDF. I also mentioned it on social media, so if you don't like that, go fuck yourself. Anyway, I mentioned there that I've grown up, so I have this experience, and I have some knowledge of these things already, but as I said already, I am not a wheelchair user. My members of my family are, but to various different degrees. I'm used to seeing lots of other people who are disabled with different needs and requirements, and I asked around to various other people who I knew were able to give me helpful feedback, and that's what I did, and that's all that any writer from any World of Darkness games needs to do. It's not difficult. Yes, it's going to cost you more money to hire extra writers and sensitivity readers. Sorry, I'm tripping over my own words. Yes, it's going to cost you more money to hire more people, but that's the fucking point. Show that you care about these people. It's very all fine and dandy sharing things on social media, whether it's the brand company or your own personal thing. If you're not actually representing them in their work, then it's all just a facade. Live up to your code and your morals. Don't just do things because it's the right thing to do, because people could just smell that shit from a mile off. Just take the time to hire the people that can do these jobs properly, who can tell you what you're doing is offensive or not, whether it's out of date or, etc., etc. Just show that you care, and just be inclusive. Don't forget and ignore people just because they're a minority. It's really important. It's incredibly simple, isn't it, when you put it like that? When I put it like that. There. Problem solved. Okay, I hope we don't have any more angry rants now. But as you could probably see, it's a very passionate thing for me. And when I'm just riffing like this, I don't really have much planned. So sorry if I was repeating myself or blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's end off this Q&A with a final question. One final question from Cobalt Sarafan Crusader. What would you like to ask?
This may have been asked before, but do you have any guilty pleasures? Any games, movies, books, or so that the majority of people seem to dislike, yet you enjoy? Also, congrats on the milestone.
Thank you ever so much. That means a lot. It really does. As for hobbies, and the little caveat of things that I enjoy that people don't, well, if we refer this to my family, everything I like, they hate. But that's fine, because I'm just a insecure, gothy nerd, so that's kind of expected. But as in terms to my friends and just people I know in general, a bit hit and miss, to be honest. I have answered the question of what my hobbies are before, but that was so long ago that I think it's worth repeating here. As kind of covered before, I'm really into music. As I said, I have an audio production background, so it kind of makes sense if music was kind of my thing. Also, podcast. I mean, audio has to be a little hobby of mine. Obviously, the stuff with Vampire the Masquerade, which you obviously know. I'm just covering all bases here. I have a huge passion for Pokemon. That's like, if I wasn't doing a podcast about this, it'd probably be about Pokemon. I've owned pretty much all the main games, and I've played most of the spin-offs. Like, I'm a year older than Pokemon, and I will put up my hand and proudly admit that I have been there since the very beginning. I can't get over how much I love the franchise so much. There's a soft place in my heart. Like, I have some plushes hiding around somewhere. I love Pokemon so much that my mother made me a Pikachu cushion via crochet. That is the dedication that I have to Pokemon. I also enjoy a good JRPG, Japanese role-playing game. I am a huge weeb. I'm a casual admirer of anime. I like reading a variety of different things. They're more so fantasy stuff, I guess. But from the corner of my eye, I see my collection of Lovecraft works. I also love the works of the manga artist and horror writer, Junji Ito. That surprises a lot of people, actually. I mentioned this back in the first, or maybe it was the second Q&A that I did. I think it was the first. And I said that I love Junji Ito's works, and that really surprised people. Probably because I'm not a huge horror fan, in the sense I don't like visceral body horror. Like, that's like my weak point there. But that's because of Western attempts at horror is often just blood, guts, gores, and everything just flying in all directions. Basically Saw and zombies. I fucking hate zombies. Like, I have a proper fear for zombies. I know you're supposed to fear zombies, but I won't watch zombie films at all. Like, for example, when I was at school once, we watched Shaun of the Dead. That scared the shit out of me. I know it's a funny film, I know it's a comedy, but that was a fucking frightening film and I didn't like it. That is how deep this fear goes. You can blame my father for that, for forcing me to play Resident Evil 3 when I was 3. So, he wasn't a very responsible parent by any means. But with horror, I do like the more suspense driven horror. The thing that I like about Junji Ito's work so much, that it's just weird and it fucks with you. Yes, you've got some weird body horror and some really grotesque stuff, but it's the sort of horror that you read it, you fear what you see and read, and then you brew on it. Like, weeks and months later. That's the sort of shit I'm into. Like, I'm going to sound very much a degenerate weeb with this statement, but I think the Asians do it better. I think they do video games a lot better. I think they do soundtracks a lot better. I have a very proud collection of JRPG soundtracks sitting on my shelf in my bedroom, which is where I'm recording this, actually. Which I should actually take pictures of that one day and see if people enjoy them. I enjoy classical music. I did say I was a music fan, but just because a lot of people don't like classical music, I do. Very much so. Lots of colour and expression. And I also enjoy walking my dogs. And I do archery. When there isn't a pandemic going on, because the place I do it is out in the open. I don't really have much hobbies beside that. I don't do a lot of things with other people besides playing these tabletop games. They're all things I do to occupy myself, because historically I have not had a lot of friends to do things with. As confident as I may seem online, I'm quite shy. I will be confident if I have to, or rather I will force myself into situations I don't want to, and I do enjoy conversing with people, but I'm not as outward as I appear to be. And as I said, not have much friends, and I've often gone against the grain of what most males do, because I went to an all-boys school. As I said, very boisterous, wanting to go parties, drinking, doing drugs, blah blah blah, and I was quite happy just fucking staying at home reading books and playing video games. I mean, I'm doing stuff with my life now, and some of those people stood on gap years, so that was like 8 years ago. So, yeah. There you go. Some hobbies that I like. I'm still trying to think of things to tell you that makes me sound a bit more interesting than what I already am. Not. I'm actually going to end this here, because I'm quickly running out of energy. You might have heard throughout this that I just sound a bit more hoarse, because those Colin voices really hurt my throat, and I only do it once per episode, but I did 3 then. Anyway, thank you ever so much for everybody that stuck through with us until the very end. Thank you ever so much for the constant support and love that I have for the podcast. Thank you ever so much for all the wonderful people that take their time to message me, to tell me that they use the podcast for their games, and all the inspiration that my podcast has brought to you. Thank you ever so much to the loving, caring, and supportive community on the Law by Night Discord server. It's one of the best Vampire the Masquerade and World Darkness related Discord servers out there. Like, I will happily say that we don't have edition wars. Like, we can have opinions on things and we don't fucking hate each other. Because that's just how the human race works. And that's great. I absolutely love it. Like, you're more than welcome there, providing you listen to the rules and you don't just be a dick. But yeah, it's a wonderful place. Thank you ever so much for supporting me on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere and anywhere. And even if you don't follow me on those places or you're not on the server, just the fact that you're listening to this, the fact that you're subscribed, the fact that you listen to it on whatever podcast place you're listening to, the fact that you tell your friends about it, your family, your Aunt Bertha's Mountain Chicken, Reginald, the fact that you're sharing and listening to the stuff that I do really, really means a lot. I run out of words, basically, to say how grateful that I am. So rather than force back the tears of joy and appreciation, I'm just going to wrap things up here. And until next time, farewell.